been practicing this. I hope it works. I'm going to try sharing a screen. Share, which one? This one. So hopefully you can all see that. This is the thing I did the screencast on, and I just want to look at it for 1 second because 5 or 6 of you misread how to use this chart over here. So this will just be a short review. But Frankie, if the DNA strand is ATG, what's the mRNA strand?
UAC.
UAC. Good. Now what do I do, Frankie? Do you remember?
Yeah, you go to U, the big U.
Go to the big U first.
And then you go to A.
Then A second.
And then you go to C.
And what's that called?
Tyrosine.
Yes, very good. So you do this with every one of these as you go along. But I think the key for people who had trouble with this is you start on the inside and you go out, right? So most of you got the codons right, but you didn't read it correctly. Maybe you started on the outside and you went in, I'm not sure, or picked a random place.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
How does it go from ATG to UAC? Like, how do you do that step?
Remember, in the nucleotides in DNA, A pairs with T and G with C.
Oh.
But in mRNA, the T goes away and it's uracil, U. So all we're doing is saying, all we're doing is looking at it and saying, so for instance, this one here, C pairs with G, right? That would be G. That would be U all of a sudden because T's not there, remember? And then that one would be T pairs with A. So GUA. So then we come over here to our chart. And we got a G, we got a U, and we have an A. And that's valine. Everybody good with that?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Good. Sorry that it was hard to figure out from the screencast. And please know that I understand that this is a hard way to learn. I also understand it's a hard way to teach. And you want to consult with each other, which is good. But feel free to contact me. I know a lot of teachers are in constant contact with students, but if you want to call my phone, I'll send my cell phone number around again. Ask me questions. I can usually help with this stuff in a minute. And oftentimes I'm around my computer. So please reach out if you need help. All right, so today I wanted to look at human chromosomes here. So I got a couple of short pages of notes, and I can send this to you. Let me look for my, you don't see my mute thing. So human chromosomes, this is chapter 14, section 1 in the book. So if you remember, as most of you do, I'm sure, right? There are 46 chromosomes in people in 23 pairs, right? Unless there's a problem or mistake. We call a lot of those chromosomes autosomes. That's to make them separate from the sex chromosomes, which is the 23rd pair. So pairs 1 through 22 are numbered 1 through 22. You get one from mom and one from dad. And pair 23 are the sex chromosomes. So it's autosomes versus sex chromosomes. If there's going to be, here we'll change pen colors. If there's going to be a child, right? So women, Frankie, women are XX or XY?
X, Y, no.
Close, 50% chance.
X.
So yeah, all women are XX among people, right? So that's female, right? And all males are XY, right? So what happens is, right, when a female is releasing egg cells, right? There are two choices. Each egg cell, remember, in meiosis gets one chromosome from every pair. So an egg cell can have mom's X chromosome or mom's dad's X chromosome, right? In males, right, every sperm cell can have either dad's mom's X chromosome or dad's Y chromosome. So this makes it interesting to trace diseases that are found on these chromosomes. So if you do a Punnett square here, Frankie, what are the chances of having a boy versus a girl?
50%.
Beautiful, 50% chance. Um, and who, Allison, who determines whether or not it's a male or a female? Mom or dad?
I think they both. Oh, sorry, my bad. Mom.
So mom determines, no, it's actually dad determines if there's going to be a boy or a girl.
Oh.
So who was that king who was beheading his wives and things because they wouldn't have boys?
Henry the something.
Yeah,
Henry.
Henry the Eighth or seventh? Yeah, eighth, I think you're right, seventh or eighth. But he shouldn't have been killing his wives or divorcing them, because the reason why he couldn't have male heirs was because he was only donating or providing X chromosomes to the fertilized egg, right? So if you think about every egg cell is going to be X, and then there's a choice between an X or a Y sperm cell getting there, and that's what determines the sex of the baby. And remember, the odds of Mrs. O'Neill at Avalon having, what is it, 6 boys in a row, right? 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, 6 times, right? So now these chromosomes, the X and the Y, the X chromosome is a normal full-length chromosome. The Y chromosome is that little short one, right, that women don't have. And if you look up here, right, the X chromosome has 1,200 genes on it for different things, including muscles, your digestive system, blood clotting, color, the ability to see in color, in red, blue, and green. So you can't have a living human being without the X chromosome. But obviously you can have more than 50% of people on the planet don't have a Y chromosome, right? It has 40 genes versus 1,200. That is not very many genes. And almost all of those genes are things that make, well, they all have to do with making men men, control of the endocrine system and hormones and primary and secondary sexual characteristics. So not a very big chromosome in that way. But what happens is is inheritance patterns on the X chromosome are interesting to look at. So you see these diseases here. There's these recessive X-linked disorders. What frequently happens here is if mom is XX and dad is XY, let's say mom has a diseased X chromosome, right? So we'll put a D here for disorder. If mom has a diseased X chromosome that she got from either her mom or her dad, so it's a bad set of instructions, mom can be healthy, right? She's not sick, but she is a carrier. So she can transmit this trait to her children, her sons and daughters. And she has a 50% chance each time of an egg having this diseased gene inside of it. So moms are oftentimes healthy carriers in this situation of diseases. If dad has a diseased chromosome here, he only has one X. So he has to pass it to his offspring. But in this case, right, we're going to go XX, X disease Y, XY, X diseased Y, right? So because mom gives her sons their only X chromosomes, every time there is a disease on the X chromosome in the egg cell, the boys have the disease, right? So this is why hemophilia, where your blood doesn't clot, affects men much worse than women, and muscular dystrophy, men much worse than women, and color blindness, right? 7% of all men on the planet are colorblind. That's a lot.
Wait, Mr. Holly,
Yeah.
why would it be XY for when the, like, yeah, instead of XX?
Yeah, that was a mistake. Good call. Good catch. So here, right, what is this? This daughter then is just like mom, right? So she's a carrier, but she's not sick. You're right. So I have to back up a little bit. But she has a 50% chance of having a daughter who's a carrier, and here and here, and she has a 50% chance of having a son with the disorder. All right. So I have another slide here. The royal family in England eventually married into the royal family in Russia. So this is called a pedigree. So we do these for dogs and for people and for all kinds of organisms. And Allison, what do the squares mean in a pedigree? Can you tell? You could look
What
at
do you like?
you could look at the names.
Oh, they're all boys.
Yes, these are males and these are females, right? This first, so Queen Victoria of England is right here, right? These are her parents. This is dad, this is mom, right? And Queen Victoria got a gene for hemophilia from one of her parents. So when you have hemophilia, you can get a cut and bleed for a long time. If you get a large cut, it won't heal and you'll bleed to death. What's a bruise, Isha? Do you remember?
Isn't it like when something almost like ruptures on the inside, or like a necessarily like a blood vessel or something like that?
Yeah, it's kind of a cut on the inside. So if somebody punches you or you bang yourself, some capillaries or veins can break and they release blood inside. And bruises look brown because there's blood in there pooling. And they stay brown because it takes a long time for the body to remove the blood, to break it down that leaks out. But somebody with hemophilia can get a bruise and bleed to death, right? So if they hit themselves hard in the kidney, right? Let's say they fall down the stairs, they can start bleeding and never stop. Nowadays, we have some medicines that they can take every day. They're quite expensive, but in the developed worlds, in the first worlds, right, people usually get those. But in the 16 and 1700s, 1800s, that didn't exist. So a lot of people with hemophilia died. So in this pedigree, Queen Victoria's a carrier. Let me change colors. And she had 9 children, right? Every one of these lines is one of her kids. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 children who lived. And then these children got married. So Beatrice married whoever this was. You can look all this up if you're curious about hemophilia in the royal family, who these people were and what years they lived. So 3 of her kids got her gene for hemophilia, right? So remember that X diseased chromosome, X chromosome. And so there was a girl who was a carrier, that's Alice. And there was another girl who was a carrier, that was Beatrice. And then Leopold was sick. I don't know if he died or not, but it probably was a difficult life. I should look that up one day. And then Beatrice had 4 sons, and 2 of them had hemophilia. And she had a daughter who was a carrier. And that daughter had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children. And she had 2 sons with hemophilia, right? So that's how you read these pedigrees. And then the Germans, this was a German royal here who married Irene.
Wait,
And then,
Mr. Hall,
yes.
when we were talking about Beatrice and her daughter,
Mhm.
did she have 4 sons, or was one of them married to the daughter?
Yep, you're right. Sorry. This
Sorry,
is 1, 2, 3, and this is a son-in-law.
Okay.
Good catch. Thank you. So then this disease spread into the German royal family, and the Russians actually had their own sort of epidemic of hemophilia that came because this child married back into married into Russian royalty, and then spread the disease through the Russians. So there are other charts for that. So this is is this a dominant or a recessive trait we're talking about, Isha?
Wouldn't it be dominant?
So in males, it looks dominant, but in females, right,
Recessive.
it's actually recessive because they have another good, right? Remember, they have an X chromosome and another one that's diseased.
So,
And so they don't get sick
okay.
because this one is good, right?
So it's
Um,
prominent, but it just, they don't like get affected by it?
Women, yes. So they're carriers, but they don't get sick. They won't die from it.
Okay.
They'll only pass it on to their offspring. So yeah, they carry it. So in my own family, let me stop the share for a second. In my own family, my wife was born with a cleft palate and hair lip and had to have a lot of surgeries. So that affected her life. It's a recessive trait that she can, or it's a dominant trait on one of her X chromosomes that she can pass on to her kids. So her sons would end up with it, but then her daughters, right? So if she passes it on to her kids, they get it. It happens that none of our 5 kids got that dominant X-linked trait, but right here we're talking about recessive X-linked traits. Hi, Anna. Didn't see you there. Let me go back to this if I can. So there's the hemophilia in the royal family. And then, let's see here. So these are recessive X-linked disorders, and they differ in men and women. Carriers versus disease sufferers versus those who don't get the gene at all. So remember, in this sort of situations we're talking about, half the kids don't get the gene, so they're healthy. Color blindness works the same way in people. So there are 3 color blindness genes on the X chromosome, or 3 color genes: one for red, one for blue, and one for green. And if you're totally colorblind, right, that means that your X chromosomes are missing all 3, right, because that's what it travels on. For a girl to be colorblind, right, she has to be X diseased, right? So both mom and dad have to give her this gene. Let me see. I got a whiteboard here too. Let me open that up. So if mom has the gene here, Right. Sorry, my handwriting is not any better on a computer than it's worse than in a classroom. Right? So if dad is colorblind and mom has the gene for colorblind but can see full color because it's recessive, right? Then in this case, right, there'd be a girl, 25% chance of a girl who's a carrier, right? 25% chance of a colorblind girl. Right? So X, Y, how am I doing, Isha? Am I getting them all right? Let me double check. Looks good. X, Y, diseased.
Wait, could the Y be
Oh yeah,
The Y is the same
Yeah.
as the X.
X?
yeah. I felt like there was something wrong there.
Wait, Mr. Holly,
Uh-huh.
why does it act like, why does the recessive trait act dominant like with the XY? Is because they only have one like diseased X chromosome in like a boy, but it still like shows.
That is a great question. Hold on, I lost my ability to write. Okay, X, diseased. The reason is because boys only have one X.
Okay.
So if it's recessive, right, it's
Yeah.
going to be, we say, expressed in the boy, right? So
Yeah.
women can be colorblind, but they have to have both of them be diseased, right? Both of the alleles that they inherit. Whereas it's more common, more likely that a woman will be X diseased X. And because we're talking about recessive, so obviously, Allison, if we were talking about dominant traits, then women would always have them at the same rate that men have them.
Mhm.
But because we're talking about recessive traits, this is the only situation where a woman would have the disease. So if we go back here to, right, this case, right, even with dad has the disease and mom is a carrier, there's only a 50% chance that a girl will have the disease, and then there's a 50% chance that they're a carrier, right? But if you go to mom here, if mom's a carrier and dad doesn't have the disease, right, no girl gets sick, and one of them is a carrier because it's recessive, right? But there's a 50% chance that a son has the disease. Right? So if this is X and Y, sorry, it's
For
getting
the
worse here.
first one, wouldn't it be 25%?
Well, 50% of boys, 25% of kids,
Okay.
right? So 50% of the boys here would have it, and 0% of the girls would be sick.
Wait, what about for the first one?
Up top here, 50% of the boys would be sick, right? And a girl would have only two choices for girls. They're either a carrier or they're sick.
So how would it be 50% if only one of the boys carry it?
Oh, so you are asking this question. Can I clear all drawings? So you're asking if dad has this recessive disease, right, and mom doesn't?
No, on the first one you did, it was for the boys. It was X, Y, and then it was then X with the defective, and then Y.
Okay, so you want the same one drawn over again?
I just didn't understand how it would be 50%, not 25.
Okay, so X, D, X, X, D, X, D, X, Y, right? X, D, Y. So down here, right, this is, I'm talking about two different things here, maybe, Isha. One is, yes, this is 25% of all 4 children, but this is half of all the possible boys. Okay? Um, let me look for my new share here. I had a little slide prepared on sickle cell anemia too. So I think there was a video you watched about chromosome 11. I liked your responses to the video. Nice job. Many of you were struck by how many genes can sit on a chromosome. Chromosome 11, they talked about it briefly in that short video, but it carries a gene for hemoglobin, right? And beta globulin was, I think, what they mentioned. And it affects red blood cells. So here is a healthy red blood cell, right? It's nice and round, looks like a donut without the hole going all the way through. The hemoglobin is totally normal. Here's what red blood cells look like. These would be, let's see, Gabby, do you think these are pictures of transmission or scanning electron microscopes? Do you remember that? Anybody want to help her out?
Is it scanning?
Oh, sorry, Abigail raised her hand. Yeah, so I think this is scanning. We're looking at the surface. So these very sick hemoglobin molecules over here, this is the sickle shape that's described, right, in the name of the disease. The hemoglobin molecules basically stick together, don't carry enough oxygen. And then you can see in this picture down here, what happens is they can't change shape. So they're stuck in this form and they create clots everywhere, which makes people quite sick. Right? See this little guy here, he's pushing himself down to fit into a space. These can't do that. So it affects red blood cells. Down chromosome 11, it affects red blood cells.
What are the medications? Like, what do they treat if a person comes in with this and they have all these clots?
There's some medicine that we can give them, but generally these people don't live a full lifetime, right? They get sick and they pass away at a younger age, and they don't have enough oxygen delivered to their muscles. They end up weak. They have breathing problems. Limbs have to be amputated because the tissue starts to die from the clots. It looks like diabetes in that way. So there are some medicines. We're getting better at this, but this disease hasn't been solved or cured in any way. This gene has 1,600 base pairs. So that's A's, T's, G's, and C's, right? A bunch of them are, the pairs are introns that need to be removed, right? So the protein has 287 amino acids. Somebody's got some feedback going on in there. So 287 amino acids, we have figured out what exactly causes the disease, right? It's a single codon that's bad, and it's this one here. About halfway through the gene, it's supposed to say cysteine, adenine, guanine, and it says cysteine, thymine, guanine, and it doesn't, and it codes for the wrong amino acid, and just that one out of 287 causes it to break, and it doesn't work. And the cells actually can carry only a tiny bit of oxygen as a result inside there. So this says SNP. That's a single nucleotide polymorphism here. So one nucleotide, right? The T is changed in the middle. right? Adenine should be there and thiamine is there instead. So when mRNA comes along, instead of putting a uracil in there, which it should, it puts an adenine in there, and that gives us the wrong amino acid, right? Back here on this chart. Nope, back here on this chart up here. And leads, so this is where most genetic disorders, all genetic disorders break down or are caused by problems related to this chart. So 4 million people have this disease worldwide.
So is it
115,000 die of it every year. 43 million people are carriers. So more than 10 times the people with the disease. This is not, sorry, this is not actually, malaria is not an X-linked trait. This sits on a regular chromosome, but it's recessive, which is why we include it in here.
Mr. Holly?
Yes.
So when you were doing showing the base pairs of when someone gets the disease, what would be wrong? Would it be the T or the G that needs? Or...
So right in here, this A becomes a T.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when that happens, if we go back to this chart here, it should be CAG, right? Which would be CAG for glutamine. It should be glutamine. But instead it's CT. No. Oh wait, we got to do the translation. Sorry. So it was CAG.
Do you have to make it into an MRI?
So we have to make it into an mRNA. So that's going to be GUC, right? So it's going to be GUC. So it should be alanine in there. But actually, it's GAG. No, GAC. GAC. So it's aspartic acid.
Oh, okay.
So you build the wrong protein. Down here, this map helps to explain partly why hemophilia is so widespread. So it turns out that if you can be a carrier of hemophilia, you're resistant to malaria.
Do you mean sickle cell? Or
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, good call. If you're a carrier of sickle cell, right, you are immune to malaria. If you have sickle cell anemia, you are also immune to malaria, but you're going to die most likely of sickle cell anemia and be sick for much of your life. So this chart here shows malaria as it's spread across the world, where it's prevalent now. And this chart shows, this is the allele for sickle cell anemia. You can see these maps line up pretty closely. And in some parts of Africa, right, you get over 12% of the population has this allele. So this is a sort of evolutionary explanation for why sickle cell anemia persists. Because if somebody has sickle cell anemia, it shows up pretty early. They're not going to live a long time. They tend to be pretty sick. They don't oftentimes make it to reproductive age where they would get married and start having children or that sort of thing, right? So you would expect the allele to be low in frequency, right? To kind of disappear over time. But because it provides such a huge advantage against malaria, which can also kill people, if you're a carrier, right, you don't have symptoms of sickle cell anemia, but you don't get malaria ever. And it has to do with the hemoglobin in your normal cells actually breaks apart more easily when the mosquito injects the parasite into you. So it stops the mosquito from being able to reproduce. It breaks the mosquito's reproductive life cycle, and makes you immune so that you're going to live and have a more normal life. We don't have a cure for malaria yet, and we don't have a cure for sickle cell anemia, so this will continue. So I think in African Americans, the rate of sickle cell anemia is like 4 times that in Caucasians, but the rate of sickle cell anemia in Africans, especially West Africans, is really high. Part of that's probably because we don't have a lot of malaria here in the United States anymore. It's only in the deep South, and we're also able to treat people when they get sick so that they don't die oftentimes. Any questions?
For when you were talking about the genes that make, or
I see Elise. Hi, Elise. I didn't see you before. Sorry, go ahead.
it's okay. So when you talk about the genes that can cause you to go colorblind, what do they necessarily affect to make you, like what part of your eye?
So your eyeball has, you've been waiting on questions for a long time, I'm sure. So the eyeball has 3 things. Well, there are rods, right, in the eyeball, on the retina, which see black and white. And then there are cone-shaped cells. And there are 3 types of cones that see color. And it's red, blue, and green. So you could have all 3 be knocked out like this, or you could just be red color blind. A very common type of color blindness is red-green. So there are a lot of men driving around who can't see stoplights very well. So if you think about a stoplight, Isha, it's got 3 lights. They're always in the same order. Abigail, what's the order for stoplights?
Red, yellow, green.
Yep, so red's up top. Here. Oh, that's my alarm to stop. So red's here, yellow's here, green's here. This helps out all the colorblind men and the small number of colorblind women when they're driving around, because when this one is brighter, they know to stop. So if somebody ever hung a traffic light upside down, that could be catastrophic. We have them sideways too, and those are always red, then yellow, then green from left to right, because that's how we read in English. So these cones see black and white, and they help you see in low light. My Uncle Joe, who is my uncle who actually died of coronavirus. Thank you for those of you who've been praying for him and his family. He died a month ago now of coronavirus. He came to see the school play. But wonderful guy. He was a salesman for his whole life, and then he was a vice president of large corporations. He was totally colorblind, and he sold clothes for the beginning of his career. So he had to come up with his own system for this large company he worked for, where on the tags of the clothes, they would put a description of the color in shorthand, so that when he was in front of a group of sellers, of buyers, and he was selling, he could say, as you can see, this lovely chartreuse jacket, right, matches very nicely with these teal pants, or whatever it was he was describing. But all he saw was black and white his whole life, but he faked it. All right, where's the stop share? All right, I don't want to keep you for the whole day. It's been wonderful to see you. Again, if you have any trouble with assignments or need any help with anything, please call or text or email. I hope you guys have a great day. I can't hear anybody because they're all muted.
You too.
You too.
Uh,
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.